Fading. Cut to.
Exterior. Interior.
Restaurant?
Bar. Club.
Day.
Night.
Action. Yo, clap, mic check. This is the Restaurant Fiction Podcast. I'm Monis Rose, Restaurant Fiction reviews, fictional restaurants, bars, and clubs featured in TV and film. What is up? What is going on? And we also dive into the screenwriting process. You know, combine the food, the restaurants, the screenwriting, because it all works. Today, we are reviewing none other than a cop bar. Yes, more of your generic cop bar, but why is the cop bar important? Because cop procedurals are important. Procedurals. Just like a lawyer show, just like a doctor show, a cop show is always going to be in the TV landscape. I don't care if it's on network or streaming or cable. There's always going to be a cop show, and cops need to drink. All right, so today we are talking to Kevin Townsley, and Kevin Townsley has written on a Chicago cop procedural show called The Chicago Code. And he was none other than mentored by Shawn Ryan, the creator of The Shield, one of the greatest and best cop shows of all time, if not the best show, period, of all time. Yeah. So reading about Kevin in his bio is awesome. I'm going to read this verbatim, by the way. Kevin was born a hustler straight from the streets of Detroit. He went from selling candy in the halls of his middle school to selling weed and psychedelic mushrooms in high school, and ultimately put himself through college with his gigantic drug enterprise. So after graduating the University of Arizona, that's a shame, Kevin. Obviously, I went to ASU, the better of the two. He traveled and lived in over 24 countries, or in 24 countries. He sold Formica in Orlando, Florida, before moving to LA and working with pretty much TV's finest. To name a few, Charles Pratt Jr., Charlie Craig, Paul Redford, Alex Graves. So most recently, Kevin just sold a pilot to Pivot Entertainment with Silver Pictures and is currently writing on Pop TV's Let's Get Physical. So yeah, back to Restaurant Fiction, the Restaurant Fiction podcast. We are reviewing a Chicago cop bar. Yes, a generic Chicago cop bar, but pretty much put this in any cop procedural, especially set in the Chicago realm, the Chicago world, the Chicago universe, the Chicago city. Besides getting into deep, and we get into the deep dish, if you know what I mean, we even learn through Kevin, that is, of what kinds of notes executives give through a pitch. And let me tell you something, it's not the notes you're kind of thinking of, but they are the good notes that are appropriate for this podcast. All right, enough. This is the interview with Kevin Townsley and my review of a Chicago cop bar. Take it away. Guys, what's going on? Today we are talking about Chicago cop bars, most particularly featured in the Fox show Chicago Code. Before we get with our guest, which is Kevin Townsley, we got a little review because us at Restaurant Fiction, we went down to Chi-Town, the 312, the 708, and we took a little drive along down Wacker and Rush and Randolph and all those, and I think the Eisenhower, but it was a really good time. But anyway, of all bars in Chicago, there's The Chicago Cop Bar is pretty interesting. First and foremost, the bar for, say, a rookie cadet is going to be different than a mayoral elected official. What I mean by that is, say, for the cadet, which is usually the cop bar that people think about, when it's in Chicago, it's probably going to be Irish. That means that the Guinness is going to be good. There's going to be the Chicago flag. Of course, there's going to be the Bears flags and Chicago Bulls flags, but also, pictures of the Mayor Daley's, both of them, even the first pretty much cops to every Rome Chicago, which were the Pinkertons, I think the Pinkerton Agency, and even for us, we saw Dennis Farina. He is a celebrity amongst, I guess, Chicago cop bars. You will find more of these elected officials, those veterans of 20, 30 years, more sipping like a $17 glass of Montepulciano in an Italian joint on Rush, more so. Cops in general, but especially in Chicago, especially nowadays, they want a bar where they can let their hair down. Usually they're going to be across from the station, but they want a bar where they can feel safe, especially nowadays. With, Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube, they don't want any haters. I mean, basically, it comes down to that. Suffice it to say, there are a lot of haters towards any kind of police, but there still are Chicago cop bars that allow police to just be safe, unwind a little bit. When we visited Chicago cop bars, the owners and even employees wanted the police there to frequent their place because, in a way, that's free security. So there you have it. That's a little quick essay, a little quick op-ed on the Chicago bars. Kevin, what'd you think? A little rebuttal. What was right, wrong? What would you fix, enhance?
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I have a rebuttal because obviously, there's 10,000 Chicago cops.
Right.
So they're going to experience the city the way they want to experience it. The cool thing, though, about the cops in Chicago is they have to live in the city to be a cop. You can't live like in LA where you could live so far away from your job. There, you have to live in the city limits. I don't mean the suburbs. You can't live in the suburbs and be a Chicago cop. So it's kind of interesting. So they all literally live in the city, which is a very special thing, I think. So I think the way in which they use the city, of course, would be different per kind of cop or copper, as they say. So Shawn Ryan, when he was researching the pilot, he went to Chicago, and he knew a couple of the cops, rode around with them, spent time with them, and then he went to their private cop bar. It's not I guess technically it's underground, but you literally have to have a key to be able to go there. And it's like 40 guys have the key to this one that he got to go to, and it's a very special group of guys, mostly detectives and other guys. You have to be voted in, I should say, and then you get a key, and then you're a member. So Shawn got to go there, and then that ultimately became part of the show. And so when the show started, when the writing staff got hired, we all flew to Chicago, and he wanted us to spend time with the cops. So we did. We all did ride-alongs. We rode with different cops of different levels, of different, some were like gangs, some did guns, some did other stuff, like everyone got different experiences, but then we ultimately all got to go as the writing staff to their private bar. So it was fucking awesome. And that's honestly where we got most of a lot of if you watch the season, almost everybody's episode has stories and like things they mined from that night. And a lot of it came from going to their bar. It was actually really cool.
What's the importance of a bar in a cop procedural?
I think a hallmark of TV is a lot of places give you that place to go. Like Grey's Anatomy has a bar, right, for example. But like Friends has a coffee shop. Like I think that the writers use it in a way for which people can decompress together and naturally get together. I was looking back at getting ready for this. I was reading skimmed one of the episodes that I wrote, the episode with Heather Mitchell, and there's a couple scenes at a bar, like an Irish bar, where the undercover cop he's just talking to bad guys, whatever. He's infiltrated this little gang, and he's hanging out with them, and they're drinking, like during the day, they're just drinking at this bar, and it's like, that seems perfect place for these type of guys would be during the day, while they're planning the shitty things they're going to do later that day or at night. It feels organic to how you would think these types of criminals what they'd be doing. They wouldn't be somewhere, it wouldn't be a place that's heavily trafficked. They probably know the bartender. It's very much just a dive bar like an Irish dive bar that they would go to.
Excellent. And it helps with the grime and it even helps with the tone.
Definitely. And helps with their I mean, people who are day drinking.
Right.
If you're drinking in the morning, that certainly says something about you.
You're not going to have a deal going down in a coffee shop.
Right. And you're not going to have other undesirable people meet you at some desirable place. It's going to be at a place that you know people, or it's in your old neighborhood or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the challenging part about a cop show is once the investigation takes off, no one has time to go sit at the bar and have a beer. So the truth of it is, you're going to have that scene at the end of the episode or at the beginning, probably. Because there's not, once the investigation gets going, there's no way you're going to go back to it. So I do think it's important to have a place for the characters to decompress. And I think food and or drinking are great places for people, because that's what we do in real life. A great way for people to go and decompress and catch up on personal things or talk about the case or whatever it is.
So the bar scene needs to be earned. It's like the reward. It's like the, hey, he earned that glass of scotch. Yeah. He earned that old fashioned.
Because what do we do after a day with our friends? We had a shitty week at work or a long day at work, and like, you know, you look over your coworker, it's like, hey, you want to grab a drink after work? Like, just to like bitch about the day, and they're like, maybe the stakes of their lives aren't that high, you know, maybe it's just the boss was an asshole that day. You weren't out there catching child predators and, you know, murderers and robbers or whatever. So it's a great way to decompress, for sure. But it's a more heightened version of it because they're cops, yeah.
Do you remember the pilot episode a little bit?
I do, yeah.
All right. Yeah. So in the pilot, the main character, Jarek, you know, he's featured in A Greasy Spoon, whereas his supporting character, Teresa Colvin, you know, she is written in a fancy restaurant. And yeah, and like in the pilot, script-wise, really it just says interior Greasy Spoon, interior fancy restaurant. Was that intentional?
Well, I mean, we got to spend 4 or 5 days in Chicago initially, all the writers, and then you got to go back for your episode when you were shooting your episode. But most of the information we mined was from that first like 4 or 5 days that we all went together, and we also got to know each other. We didn't know each other very well, but we were eating at like, I mean, nice restaurants, other restaurants like where the cops would go. We were on like an adventure, you know. So I think all of that informed how you would write. The tricky part is though when you go shoot something, even if I named the place in Chicago, I was like, oh, it's Gino's East. It's right there. You know, they're not gonna. I mean. Chances are we're not going to shoot there. Like, there's no way, you know, but then it might just become a pizza place. Like, it just, you know, so it gets dumbed down. So that's why even I think Shawn put fancy restaurant in the pilot, because you could find a fancy restaurant. You can find white linen napkins and the tablecloths and the whole experience. And it could be anywhere, though. It's the hard part. You have, as a writer, I think, what you want it to be, and then it becomes what they can afford. I mean, even my time in Chicago, we ate with the cops, which is really interesting. But we ate with the cops at Gibson's, which is like one of the most famous steakhouses there on the Gold Coast.
Yes. Is it still good?
Like, it was excellent. Okay. I think there's better steak out there, but it's really good, you know. And the cops that we were with love it. They love it. And it's great. And we went there, but like at the same time we're there, we have a nice, you know, big table and the writers and the cops and stuff. And then we walk by and like Jesse Jackson's there. But in Chicago, I think everything can happen at the same spot. So the cops obviously can eat there as well, but it might not be their number one place to go because it is more expensive. But that said, cops make a lot of money.
They do, absolutely. And the pensions
and
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Like a surprising amount of money. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So
we support Chicago police.
I do, big time. Yes. Oh, for sure.
Chicago has such a food presence in terms of steak, pizza, beef. How important was that to put into the Chicago Code?
It's important, I think. I mean, I think it's as important as saying, I'm not a sports person, but, you know, Shawn Ryan is, and like talking about the difference between the White Sox and the Cubs. Like the city's divided. I think there's people like both. I think, and when you talk to the people who live in Chicago about the pizza they love, it's very divisive, you know. And so I tried to try them. I literally tried as many as I could. People were like, no, you've been here? You got to go here. And I was like, where is that? And then I would go and like, I ate so much deep dish pizza when I was there. Oh my God, like so much. You can only eat like 2 pieces.
It's like a lasagna in a pizza.
Oh, and even if you get 4 pieces, you're just like, oh, and you don't know what to do with it. You got to get back to your hotel. Like, so, but I did try to do my due diligence. If someone's like, you got to try here, you got to try there, I would go and do it. I have a fun food story for you.
Okay.
I pitched a show to CBS. Didn't sell it. Almost did. I can't take credit for the idea, but I did come up with the suggestions. the production company I was working with wanted me to pitch each character with the food that they would eat at lunch. And I was like, interesting. And it wasn't my idea. It wouldn't be my first thought, but they wanted me to do it, so I did it. So I'd already had the character descriptions like laid out, like Bob. I don't even know what I couldn't even pitch the show to you now, but like Bob Smith. He's this way. He's a badass. He was a former military. I don't know, whatever. And then each person was paired with their thing. So one guy was like, and for lunch, and I told them at the beginning, I'm going to describe all the characters, and when I describe each character, I'm going to reference which food they would eat for lunch. And they got really excited, which was so weird. And then like one guy was a smoothie. One woman was salad, hold the dressing on the side, chicken on a different plate or whatever. And then one guy was soup or something. And then one guy, it was like a team of 5 guys that were like law enforcement officers. I don't know if anyone's ever been in a pitch, but like when they're in a pitch, the executives have notebooks and they write down what you're saying, but they don't write down literally everything you say. They just write down certain things. And so it always, like you're talking straight, there's no break. But I always find it really interesting, the things that they choose to write down. But one of the things I did choose to write down was all the food names. When I was pitching it was really funny. Yeah.
So
it made me laugh. Yeah.
I got like 3 takeaway questions from that.
Please,
I got 3. First of all, I think the biggest one is, so TV executives love food. That's really got
lunch
the
is a big
attention.
deal. Yeah.
Lunch is a big deal. What was the takeaway? I'm assuming the takeaway was that it's important developing even what the characters would eat. What do you think of that?
It's because I'd never done it before. I never considered, when I break characters for like an original idea, I don't usually think about what they would eat. For some reason, that's not part of how I think. I don't know why. I think about the things they would do. Maybe do they go to church? Do they have kids? Are they married? Are they gay? Are they straight? Bigger questions and stuff. But I've never considered what they eat, and I think it could be a helpful tool, because like if I said to you right now, like I'll be like, we're looking at a guy across the thing, I was like, oh yeah, I know that guy. You're like, oh, how do you know him? It's like, well, we grew up together. He's the kind of guy that what would be like a food like
he's a meat and potatoes guy.
Yeah, you would understand that. Yeah, he's a meat and potatoes guy. Or if I was really specific, he's he eats his vegetables. He only eats vegetables with no dressing on them, raw. And you're like, okay, like that's something about him. You don't necessarily know what.
Right.
But you're like, okay, maybe he's vegan. I don't know. Like he's clearly into his diet. But I think anybody who's too into their diet is hiding so many other things.
That's usually true.
Yes.
That's
so someone who's
true.
people who are very controlling with food, I find them insufferable.
So almost food can be like a gateway drug or a food diet into a character that can even, go down to even more vulnerabilities.
Yeah, it could. I personally never broken character that way, but I definitely think, like for you, for example, I think you personally could break characters through food and then the blow out from there. Like I might come in through a different lens. I think ultimately you have to answer all the same questions, so it doesn't matter where you start. But whatever excites you the most, I think is a good place to start.
Or what is a soup guy? Who just likes soup? I'm just picturing like the Soup Nazi episode from Seinfeld.
Right.
Jambalaya or something.
Right. I don't know. The soup guy, I am hesitant to order soup anywhere. Like if someone I was at your house and you made me soup, I would eat it. But if we're out at like a restaurant, even a really nice restaurant, I'd be like, why would I waste my time with soup? There's so many other interesting things. But that said, I'm in places all the time, people just order soup. Like that's as their meal.
Absolutely.
Soup's a starter at best for me. Like I
will say so guys, all the listeners, we're recording in Los Angeles right now, and there's this Korean barbecue joint called The Corner Place, and they have it's called a cold noodle soup.
Okay.
And it is probably one of the best dishes in all of LA. It's the only dish on the menu you cannot take home. Like they're on the menu. It's like, oh, you can take home the bulgogi or the kalbi beef or the brisket, all the leftovers. You can even take home all the bonchons like the kimchi. But then the cold noodle soup, no, you cannot take it home.
Because it's too much volume, or what are you saying?
It's I think maybe people don't want it to be replicated. It's like almost, it's that good. Yeah, I'm just saying.
But if you described a character that only eats that,
right,
it's interesting.
Right, exactly. Plus, if I describe, then he knows his Korean food pretty well too.
That's true, and also too, if you're like someone who like wastes their leftovers, You can just be like, oh, I was going to take it home, but they won't let me.
You're right.
See? And then you don't look like an asshole.
You worked on The Shield.
I was Shawn Ryan's assistant on The Shield, and then, stayed with him. Yeah.
So, for those who do not know of The Shield, it stars a different kind of cop, Vic Mackey, and it's also set in Los Angeles.
If you ever watched the whole Shield, which I think is, in my opinion, the greatest show, one of the greatest shows ever made. Like it's, but anyway. But one thing he said was that if you notice in the break room on the show, they never drink coffee. There's not one instance, I don't think, in the entire show where the cops drink coffee. He didn't want the cops drinking coffee, so sometimes they had tea or whatever. But if you looked at it, they didn't. I have to check that never, but I'm pretty sure it's never that anyone drinks coffee, which is kind of really interesting because he didn't want cops and coffee is a cliche, right? So he made that choice.
Gotcha. All right, so there's
on the go. Yeah, it wasn't as
definitely no cops and donuts.
Definitely, that was another rule. Yeah.
Yes.
No coffee, no donuts. In the break room, if you went back and watched it, you'll see that if they're drinking water, they're drinking something else.
Gotcha. Okay. And really, that also tells you about the characters. That tells you about the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a different kind of cop show. How much time does a writer need to spend at a bar in a scene?
My really writery answer is no scene should be more than 2 pages.
Oh, excellent.
So that would be one thing. There are some shows, there's some cable shows, like Better Call Saul, there's like 8-page scenes. But for the most part, in a network show, you're never going to have a scene more than 2.5 pages would be considered very long. So in terms of page count, it wouldn't be that long. Under 2 minutes, for sure. A minute. You think about how much you have to accomplish in a short amount of time. If we were to sit here and break a whole story of an original pilot of something, for me, I would come up with the scenes first, like the beats, right? So a beat is basically the summary of a scene, right? So we would come up with those ideas, and we might have an idea where they're set. But I think it's actually initially least important where they're set until you figure out what the story is and how it works. Because you might be like, oh, that's exterior street for now. And then you keep going, then you and as you look at that beat, you're like, oh, it'd be cool if they're eating during that scene. It'd be really cool if they're at a diner. Oh, I know this great diner. Oh, this would be perfect. And then but that, like, it can add value to the beat. But I personally wouldn't look at a scene based on food first. And that was a fucking show about a chef or something. Yeah, I mean, he's probably in a kitchen or something. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, for me, it works the other way.
Excellent.
I don't know if that helps, but
oh no, that helps perfectly. All right, so you're with. You mentioned Shawn Ryan. Also, Shawn Ryan works with. I might pronounce this wrong. Marnie Hochman Nash.
That's right.
All right, excellent. So you're with them. What did you take away from that experience about the importance of a bar, a restaurant, and a TV show?
Maybe it would be different if I worked for someone that was a foodie. Like, Shawn's not a foodie.
Okay.
So he likes specific foods and likes to eat at certain restaurants, but I wouldn't call him a foodie. Like someone who's looking for culinary experience. I'm not that way. I'm not really out looking for... this is what Seinfeld said. People view food in one of two ways. It's either fuel or it's a culinary experience. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm more the fuel guy.
Yes.
And I think that, like, I just want to be full because I don't have to deal with it again for the whole day. That's why I've been drinking Soylent the last couple months, because I can't even deal with eating during the day. It's too much work. So which goes against food, which I understand. But yeah, I think if working for someone that was super into it, I think it would matter. Like when you read writer scripts too, sometimes you read them and they'll talk about the specific wine that someone's drinking or whatever it is, or they're referencing like expensive wine, or clearly they're probably wine collectors, or have their own little collection or cellar or whatever.
You've done a fair amount of traveling, and I'm sure you've had your own experiences worldwide in restaurants and bars. Which one would you pick and put your characters in for one of your pilots? It can be like a scary one, a cool one, a weird one that you could have died in. When
I travel, I do kind of seek out the local experience as much as I can. I try to find someone or something that can plug me into a neighborhood or a world that you would never read about in a book or could Google easily, or you want to be taken somewhere ideally. So my experience, my goal with traveling is to be taken into places. That said, you go where someone takes you. But my preferred places, honestly, are dive bars, like kind of a shitty burger somewhere. When when they only take cash, that you're in the right place. Like for me, like I'm like, oh, okay, this is it. Yeah, the ATM's there. It's too expensive to get the money out, but you can do it anyway because it's so great. I like that kind of dining. So I can't think of. I'm writing something now. I lived in Florida for a while, and the script I'm writing now, it's set in Florida. And
it's selling Formica tables or something?
I was doing that when I lived there. I sold laminates.
Laminates.
Which is Formica is a laminate.
Okay.
So Formica is like saying Kleenex. It's the name brand of tissue paper. No, but no one would ever know that. But it's a fun fact. But yes, I worked for my grandfather for 5 years. I lived in Orlando and selling laminates. And he owned a business that manufactured parts for yachts and boats and office furniture, very boring stuff. In Florida, it's such a weird place anyway. But there's so many little divey places, so many little just like a little stand or something. And right now, the things I'm picturing are that because it's in Orlando. I said it in Orlando, so it's just like obscure places that I can't remember the name of. Or
will they be cash only? When you write it.
Yes, so interesting. The scene that I did write so far that has food in it, they're already eating. They haven't paid. Meaning they've already paid and they're sitting down, so they're mid-meal. But no, they haven't. Yeah. Oh. But in my head, they probably pay cash. Or it'll say in the background, cash only in the window. You'll know for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. All right.
And cops a lot of times eat for free. So.
Really? You found that out?
They're not supposed to take anything for free. Oh, this is a fun story, though.
Okay, yeah.
Went to, we were doing ride-alongs with the cops in Chicago. Now, they're not supposed to take food from anybody, and people want to give you food. It's just an interesting thing. Like, as a law enforcement officer, I think people they are saying thank you in a way. They don't do it for the most part, at least not around me. But I wanted to get a Red Bull because it was like late. I was like not sleeping. We're drinking a lot, like late at night, up early, like spending all day with these guys. And so it's like late. It must be like 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, can we just stop at this drugstore, whatever? I don't even think I don't know if they have CVS, but it's like something like that, the equivalent of that. I go in, so I have a bulletproof vest on because we're doing the ride-alongs and we're in the shittiest neighborhoods. But I don't have a gun or anything. But I have jeans on. I basically have a T-shirt on, and I have a bulletproof vest on. So I go into CVS or whatever it is. I go get the Red Bull. I come to pay, and I'm waiting in line. And it comes my turn, and she goes, "Oh, just take it." And I was like, No. I was like, no, I can't. And I had that moment. I was like, should I take it? And I was like, no, I should not take it. And then I was like, no, I really want to pay for it. She's like, no, just go. It's totally fine. I go, no, I actually need to pay for this. I don't. Because she thought it was a cop, and it was just like I was just gonna get it, and it was just a weird moment, and I was like, no, and then I did pay for it because I felt so shitty. It's like it'd be one thing if I was a cop and whatever, maybe I would do it, but
you looked the part. I will say that
I do look like a cop. I get yes.
Sometimes when I want to go to a VIP exclusive event, I'll just put back on my chef's coat or an apron.
That's great.
And I'll just like walk in, and the security will look at me, and they'll just like point me inside.
Yeah.
I mean, same.
So then after that moment, I was like, wow, I could just invest a couple $100s in a bulletproof vest, walk around most places, and probably eat for free.
Exactly.
This would be like the homeless life hack. Like if I didn't have anywhere to live, or eat, and I was like starving, I'd like just buy a bulletproof vest.
Yeah, or to get in the clubs or to get in the private parties. You could probably get in
the back of a club or like the Staples Center.
Yeah, just put on a chef's coat or an apron with, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Small little things to get you through life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and going back to your bio, I mean, you were a hustler since the streets of Detroit.
Yes.
Excellent.
But I try not to. I'm very honest. Like as I'm older, so I don't.
Yeah.
Like I literally paid the $2 for the Red Bull.
Excellent. Excellent. You are a changed man.
Yes, changed man. TV writing changed me. Yeah.
Kevin, I really appreciate you on this podcast. It's been really fun.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast. So
awesome.
I really appreciate it, and I love what you do. So thank you.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. That was awesome, guys. Kevin and I go way back. Met him in a classroom type setting. Yes. Besides all that was mentioned in Kevin's bio, Kevin is a teacher and mentor for writers, one of the best. He teaches with the school, Script Anatomy, one of the premier writing schools in Los Angeles. You need to check him out. Yes, I did say that, or at least check out when and what Kevin is teaching, or the other amazing classes that Script Anatomy offers. You can find all of that at www.scriptanatomy.com. Also, if you want to check out Kevin's work, his most recent show, Let's Get Physical, just premiered in January of this year, and that year is 2018, by the way. All right, for other reviews and interviews with restaurant fiction, be sure to check out our podcast page on iTunes, also on Stitcher, as well as our website at www.restaurantfiction.com. My name is Monis Rose, and as always, keep it real, keep it fresh, and keep it on the flip side. Cut to
Exterior. Interior.
Restaurant?
Bar. Club.
day.
Night.